Hi guys, welcome back. My name's Emily.
Oh, I'm Greg.
And this is Telltale. And today we are going to talk about the Martian Odyssey. I'm going to let you do the background again real quick.
Okay, well, A Martian Odyssey was written in 1934 by Stanley G. Weinbaum. And the first great thing about Stanley G. Weinbaum is he's from Milwaukee, Wisconsin.
Woo!
And he was a member of the Milwaukee Fictioneers, which also included Robert Bloch of Psycho fame. He wrote the novel that Alfred Hitchcock based the movie on. Mm-hmm. And also Ray Palmer, who became editor of Amazing Stories in the 1940s. Weinbaum sold his first story, A Martian Odyssey, in 1934. It was in the July 1934 Wonder Stories. He died of lung cancer in 1935. In the space of about a year and a half, maybe a little less, he wrote his entire output, which included quite a few short stories and a couple of novels, The New Adam and Valley of Flame, I believe, or The Black Flame, The Black Flame. A couple of novels in there. And he totally revolutionized science fiction, starting with A Martian Odyssey, which Isaac Asimov called him the second Nova because he just blew everybody away with this story. Mm-hmm. It was science fiction before Weinbaum was bug-eyed monsters hell-bent on taking over the earth and stealing all the women and destroying everything. You know, aliens were always something evil to be feared and fought against. And of course, the end of the story was always the Earthmen were too clever and overcome the aliens and beat them all and destroy all the aliens or push them back to the planet or whatever. Mm-hmm. This was the first story that actually treated aliens, first of all, as very alien. They weren't just giant bugs or scaly lizards or something like that. He actually imagined creatures that could not exist in Earth's ecosystem. They evolved under a completely different ecosystem. The setting, of course, is Mars, 1934. Mars could be almost anything you wanted it because
Absolutely.
We had never been there. We didn't really know that it didn't have an oxygen atmosphere and didn't have any life. So he populated Mars with all kinds of life, a great variety of life, very, very imaginative.
Beautiful world building, beautifully done.
Excellent world building, excellent imagination of aliens, different forms of communication, different forms of behavior, different biologies like the silicon creatures. Just imagined everything to be truly different from Earth for the first time ever in science fiction. And that was a huge influence over every science fiction author that came after that.
For sure. Yeah, it's really impressive. So the premise of this story is there's basically this group of scientists who are going and basically surveying the Mars. They're the first landed group there who's ever visited. So they're kind of going on this little reconnaissance mission thing. And our main character, I don't remember the details specifically, but there was something went wrong and he crashed. So he has to hike back, all the way back to headquarters. While he's hiking, he encounters this being called Trill
or something like that.
Yeah, his name is an onomatopoeia. His name is a sound. Because that's what it says when he's trying to communicate his name to it. So this creature, Twill or whatever, is getting eaten by some kind of carnivorous vine plant thing. He recognizes that that's not okay. So he saves the creature, and it is his companion for his entire walk back to the, basically back to headquarters. So he's wandering back, and they first encounter this cool creature that's like it's called a pyramid builder. It's a silicone-based being, and it started off really small. So there's these tiny little pyramids that all have their tops busted off that progressively get bigger over the miles that they're walking, only for them to encounter the being in a much bigger pyramid popping out of the top, and literally this thing shits bricks. I shit you not, it shits bricks. It has no brain, as Twill kind of communicates to him. No brain, it just exists, and it has existed over approximately a century to build these little pyramids from the tiny being it was to the huge being it is now, and shit bricks. I thought that was great. Like, literally, it shits bricks. So then the next being they encounter is like this hive mind mining community, and they don't really know what it's mining, but it's also like a mimic community. So he says words to it, and they all start kind of responding in those words. So they all kind of like chant these words that he said to them back to them. And of course, it's interesting because the hive mind has learned the words but doesn't associate meaning. Twill, on the other hand, has learned words, a few of them, that he can actually say with how his throat is made, based off human form. S has learned this really interesting language to interact with the main character. So he's kind of doing his thing, and they're exploring this mine culture, and then they kind of like start investigating some of their machinery and things like that, and the mine people freak out. And so they're trying to run out of the mine because these mine people are trying to screw them up and mess them up, and who knows what they were going to do when they got a hold of them. We don't know for sure, but they definitely were not happy that they were messing with their machines. So right as they're about to get attacked, Twill, like, basically our main character is saved, and Twill is able to escape on his own. He can do this like super jump, which was really cute actually, because the main character recognizes that Twill could have saved himself the entire time, and chose not to stay loyal to his companion, who is clearly not of any of the civilizations of Mars.
Yeah.
Which was really kind of sweet and super sentimental and sappy. I really liked that part. But yeah, so he gets picked up by his friends, and the whole story is basically him recounting the adventures to his other fellow scientists about meeting Twill and getting, all his little adventures as he was trying to hike back. So it was a really interesting and fun read. I liked it a lot. It's of course a short story, so it's a quick read. It's fun. It's got really great world building.
It's got a lot of humor in it.
Yeah, it's really funny.
In some ways, I think Weinbaum is maybe doing a little bit of satire with some of these alien creatures, comparing them to some of our what's the word I'm looking for? Some of our assumptions about things, and but it also goes beyond just the simple, fun science fiction Odyssey story of a trek across Mars. It brings up an issue of the fact that for the first time in science fiction, people meet up with some very, very different creatures and cultures, and instead of immediately starting a war or enslaving them or something, make friends with them and get along, and they treat each other as equals. And of course, he kind of needs Twill, but Twill is kind to him and helps him, and they work together to get him back to his ship. And it makes a very important point about accepting other cultures, accepting other beings, accepting things that are different from ourselves, and not reacting with violence and anger and fear, which is very important today. That gotta just treat each other as fellow beings, and stop seeing each other as this race or that race or this or that or the other thing, and just treat everyone as people, as equals. And so he makes a very important point with this story, and it just brought to mind, there's another story from the 1980s that was eventually made into a film that kind of sort of does that same thing, but in a little deeper way. It was written by Barry Longyear. It's called Enemy Mine, where these two where this alien lizard-like creature and this human are at war with one another, but they crash on this planet, and the only way for the two of them to survive is to work together. And it's difficult for them to get there, but eventually they do get there, and they eventually do help each other, and they do survive. Very similar to a Martian Odyssey, almost like Longyear took a Martian Odyssey and elaborated on it to make it more significant for race relations.
And I really appreciated too, like, the ways in which they tried to interact with one another, being so obviously different species. So I kind of, to dumb it down, I kind of thought of it as how, like, we try to build communication with our animals. Like, I have a cat, Shelby, who is 20 years old, and we have a language between us. Like, just the other day, my other cat, Henry, was sleeping on the fridge, and Shelby knows he's not supposed to be on the fridge because she's not allowed to be on the fridge. So she came and did, like, this little dance to tell me that I needed to follow her and started screaming at me to show me, then tattle on her brother that he's on the fridge. But that's kind of the same thing that these two had to develop. They had to develop a pantomime. They had to develop body language and some vocabulary to kind of indicate how to interact and how to keep each other safe and how to speak to each other and communicate different ideas. And I thought that was really, really interesting. Just kind of seeing how they kind of just trial and error trying to figure out what things are. And I thought that was really cool because I could relate it to something in my life where that's how I communicate with my pet, or that's how we train dogs, or that's how, you know, we interact with other intelligent beings. We don't think of them as intelligent, but they have the capacity to learn. And so I thought that was really interesting how they even took it a step further and recognizing that each other is an equal and is intelligent just as much as the other. And it's really interesting. Very well done.
And I just remembered part of the story, part of their communication is drawing pictures in the sand.
Yep.
To communicate with one another. That's how he communicates that he's from Earth.
They also communicate through numbers. So numbers is somehow a universal language. Maybe not the same word, but they kind of relate that numerals are numerals.
Yeah.
So mathematics still apply on this planet, which is how he kind of finds out that Twill is in fact an intelligent being, because it not only recognizes the pictures, but recognizes numerics. So I thought that was a really, really fun and really cool way to kind of get them to communicate, because that can't be easy as an author to figure out how to get these two very unlike beings to talk and understand each other.
Well, especially at that time, like I said, everybody else was writing stories about alien monsters.
Kill it because it's different.
Not even...
Yeah.
And the aliens were really just like human beings, but angry and green or whatever, you know? They weren't really alien.
Yeah.
He looked at that and said, well, that's wrong. If they come from a totally different environment, they would be completely different from us and have a different language and different physiology and different emotions and different behaviors. And he applied that and came up with not just one different alien, but a whole planet populated with all these different beings.
And they kind of talk about that too, and like some of the plant life appears to be somewhat sentient. So it's really interesting how it's not just animalistic beings or, you know, humanoid anything. They're all very different, and you still have like this plant life that is very much alive. And it has jungles on Mars, according to this, which was really kind of fun, because we just think of Mars as a desert planet because we've seen it. It's a desert planet. But this has desert.
Okay, so sorry, but I messed up. I didn't charge my battery up enough, and so I cut Emily off kind of mid-sentence there. But we were pretty much wrapped up with what we needed to say about A Martian Odyssey. It's a great story. It's a science fiction classic. It has had a great influence over the genre. And if you love science fiction, you should definitely check it out. It's not one that you have to pay a lot of money to get. Weinbaum's work is entirely in the public domain now. You can go on Project Gutenberg and get it. You can download it off of Kindle and the Apple Books for free. Very easy to get a hold of. Or there are some really, really good old hardcover and softcover novels collecting Weinbaum's work that you would have to pay for, but probably not all that much. So yeah, check them out. Let us know what you think. Put comments in by our videos, put comments on Facebook, go on the Telltale discussion group and talk about A Martian Odyssey or any other Stanley Weinbaum or anything else you're reading, really. Like us, subscribe to us, come back next Friday, 6 o'clock. We release our videos every week. We've been very good about meeting that schedule. So you can count on us for that so far. And we'll see you next Friday. Bye.